Welcome. I'm really glad you are here. I am. It's probably the first time I'm in front of such a crowd. Last time was all hands meeting, probably around 2019 or someone like that. So I'm also a bit nervous. So, Agile coaching is inefficient, problematic, and dysfunctional. It is, right? So at least this is a very simplified statement of the critics of Agile and Agile coaching. And one article that always comes to my mind when I think about it is the one from Bob Marshall. I think he wrote it around 2012. Agile coaching is evil. But in general, I believe that different levels of agility can coexist. But in my talk today, I'd like to take a closer look of what I think Agile coaches should do differently. So, and my goal is to offer you some relatable advice. So some question came already, but I would like to know more about my audience. So who is actually Agile coach or Scrum Master? Hands up. All right. So, and did you ever get frustrated because you hit a wall of resistance, let it be with the team or the management, the whole org? Yeah, it's frustrating, right? Breathe through it. So, and who of you has been victim of Agile coaching? Also some. And did you ever get frustrated or annoyed because your Agile coach knew everything better and bombarded you with Agile games or new initiatives or whatever? Yeah. So, and who in this room is very new to the whole Agile thing? All right, a couple. So I hope you're still motivated to go down that path. I personally think it's a very rewarding role, yeah, and adds a lot of value to our organizations. There was a little intro, but still I would like to tell you a bit about myself. I'm Nadja, former VP engineering of a German software company called Jimdo that is focused on online website builder and small and medium businesses. And I've been in different leadership roles there, and my Agile coaching career actually started around 2010, 2012. And over the past 5 years or so, I supported a local consultancy to train Agile coaches in Hamburg, Germany. And currently, I'm at Spotify as a consultant. Done. It's my first time I'm here at this conference, and I must say I had a dojo yesterday and a very amazing group of participants, some of them here in the front rows. So it was really nice, so I'm happy you are here too. My talk is about, as you can see in the title, effective Agile coaching. And I do think it can not only be insightful for Agile coaches, but also for Scrum Masters and managers. And my little empowerment promise to you is that after this talk, you have a better understanding of what you can do to be more effective at Agile coaching. And I'd like to invite you to, during this talk, inspect yourself and check in on those things that might resonate with you. So you use that time well. So we heard from Steve Dunning already. So there is, depending on how you look at it, roughly 20 years of Agile. Yeah, when we don't take Peter Drucker into account. But there's also a lot of criticism for Agile or Agile coaching being merely good at local optimization and doomed to hit the wall like of traditional management because people resist to fundamentally change their organization or how their organization operates. And it's not what the creators of the Agile Manifesto had in mind, or it's applied in the wrong way, and whatever. And maybe all of that is true, but unfortunately, It often seems very binary, and often enough it doesn't come with a lot of practical advice. And that's what triggered me to give that little talk, to highlight some concept that you can apply as Agile coaches. And my key takeaways that I give them up front, so you remember them very well. My key takeaways or key messages I have for you is, first, be intentional and clarify your assignment. The second one is exercise from a real coaching stance, or coach from a real coaching stance. And the third one is establish a self-reflection ritual. I let that sink in for a while. So there are also three main sources that I want to mention that shaped my thinking around the topic of this talk. And this is, for one, The Art of Action from Stephen Bungay. He shaped a lot of my thinking around strategy deployment, and how to close the alignment gap between plans and actions. There's my friend Judith Andresen. She's author of a book, Agiles Coaching. It's one of the German books. Unfortunately, there's no translation, but she definitely shaped a lot of my thinking around assignment, self-assignment, and a real coaching stance. And then there's Professor Peter Hawkins. He is author of a couple of books of systemic leadership and team coaching, and I highly recommend exploring the resources. So, to get into the topic, I'd like to start with a simplified example story. So, imagine you are Agile coach in your organization, and your manager asks you to support the product owner of one of the Scrum teams. She's very new to her role, she doesn't have a lot of leadership experience, but she has the goal to become a solid PO. And when you ask her, yeah, so how will you know that you are a good PO? She replies, yeah, well, I can lead stakeholder conversations with confidence. I apply strategic thinking to my product decisions. My manager trusts me with making those decisions, actually, and I maintain a good relationship with the engineering team, and also a healthy level of tension between product and engineering. And so that's the outcome of that session, and you close that. Fine, that's good. I would like to work with that PO. And imagine it's your second session now. And of course, you want to check in and ask your PO how she feels she's progressing towards her goals. And she's like, yeah, I'm far off, actually. I'm very, very frustrated because I just figured out that my peers earn way more than I do, and I'm here for a very long time already, like in this company. And you can relate. So, of course, you've observed in this company there's some pay gap, and your opinion is a truly agile organization should strive for equality in pay. So, you pick the topic up and say, okay, tell me about your last salary negotiation. And over the next coaching sessions, you work with your coachee on improving her capability to lead successful salary negotiations. What happened? It's very obvious. I'm not saying closing the salary gap is not important, by the way, but what happened? Like, is your coachee a better PO now? What would your manager say? Did you deliver on your assignment? Yeah. No, you didn't. So instead of focusing on your product owner's goals, you got sidetracked by the salary topic. And yeah, I know it's a simplified examples, but I believe, and this is my first key message, is we have to be intentional and we have to prevent self-assignment. And to give you a better idea, because I find the term quite difficult to translate, and in German it's Selbstbeauftragung. It's not prettier, but I think that's the best way to deliver that to you. So the act of assigning something, such a task or a mission, whatever it is, to oneself. Of course, Selbstbeauftragung isn't, yeah, it is, right? So, and why is it important? Because agile coaching is a mean to an end and not an end in itself. So it doesn't exist in a vacuum, and it does need to connect to the, and that's certainly opinionated, but it does need to connect to a higher intention of your organization, at least to your unit. So wherever you are active and operating within that system. And if you don't clarify your assessments, chances are very high that we do something like cherry picking. So we do only the things that we like, that we think are fun, that are rewarding for us or most rewarding, or that we may see through the tiny perspective that we have onto the whole system. And the risk is high that we, by doing that, and do more of local optimization instead of serving the broader system. Another pattern or another risk that I see is something I call agile heroism. So we think we are the ones who can save this organization, and we have to do everything and become the bottleneck to everything because that model doesn't scale very well. And also, our activities won't have a lot of focus and probably not a lot of traction when we run them. And a third one I would like to make you aware of is we may overwhelm the organization like some sort of agile missionary, yeah, and constantly overstep boundaries that are not ready to be overstepped yet. So, I would say we have to deliberately and consciously make an effort to prevent self-assignment. And I think the most important way to do that is to actually have meaningful conversations with our stakeholders. It could be meaningful conversations. It could be a collaborative inquiry. But we have to make the effort to understand what we actually should be working on, what the expected outcome is, how the organization would look like if we would be successful, if that what we are doing might have an impact of the higher intent of the organization. And my tip here is, because I cannot foresee every conversation, but my important tip here is don't stop asking as long as you feel you have not understood well enough what it's about. Because most people do, like most people skip conversation because it's uncomfortable to pull through to the end to really understand what we should accomplish. So I give you that tip. And you should have the feeling like, yeah, I actually can say yes to it, or I can accept it. And if you don't stop asking. So, because ideally the answers help you to create coherence between the high intent of the organizations and the actions you are taking. And that is certainly not something that we do once. We may do that in every session with a coachee, and in a systemic or typical systemic coaching process, this is something called contracting. But with management or with different organizational unit, we might do that in a different rhythm. It's still important to reiterate on them because most make the mistake to do it once and they're 3 years in the organization, but they didn't revalidate whether the vague assignment from the beginning, like make us more agile, is still valid. So they do just things, or they just react to the system. So now that we may be already on a self-assignment, what easily happens, how do we recognize that we are? So I think that is quite obvious, but I brought some indicators how you can recognize it. I would like to make you aware of. This is not a complete list, and you may also come up with more, but this is what I observed. And the first one that's very obvious is you miss clarity. Like if I would ask you, what's your actual assignment? You wouldn't have a good answer to it. Or it would be something like the famous vague mission of, yeah, we want to become more agile. So what's also typical is that you want more than your coachees. And I say just typical because it's just an indicator. So if you constantly feel that the organization, the unit, the team, everyone is not doing enough, that may on one hand speak for your agency, but on the other hand might lead to a risk to start it initiative that is not related to any intent of that organization. And just to give a quick example, a team asks you to conduct a Kanban training because they want to have more visibility of their work. But your opinion is, no, they should nail Scrum first, so we do the Scrum training first, and you don't realign on that. So just this going ahead with making the thing that you think is right without providing feedback on having that conversation could lead to self-assignment. What also is an indicator you should look out for is when you notice, and I've seen that a lot in the agile coaching scene, is when you notice that you start judging people and manager around you for making choices that you disapprove because they are not agile enough or whatever you are biased towards, but you always feel there is something lacking. And this is a good indicator where you should at least start to be this is skeptic about your next action. And last, and most importantly from what I think is that you lack a dedicated self-reflection ritual. So who has a self-reflection ritual that he's doing constantly and that he or she has scheduled time for? Yeah, I wish all hands would go up. Because I think this is a place that helps you to detect actually when there is something wrong with self-assignment. Okay, so, no, it's too early. So, yeah, I don't want to overwhelm you yet. So the second key message I was talking about, or I want to share with you, is that coaching is not about, or not only, about asking the right questions. It's also not about increasing your Agile Games portfolio, but it is establishing and operating from a real coaching stance. Yeah, and I believe this will make you way more effective at any coaching assignment. So if you did not attend a coaching training yet, I would highly recommend you to do that. It was very helpful for me. I can see that for a lot of other colleagues that's very helpful, but this is probably a very plain advice. So this is a model I brought to share with you, because I think even not having this coaching training, clarity about your coaching stance is really helpful. And I think this model is quite helpful. I had the chance to share it with the Dojo group yesterday and got good feedback. So this is, I call it the coaching stance triad. This is not invented by me, but the elements that you see here are described by my friend Judith Andresen in her book Agiles Coaching, that also discusses Selbstbeauftragung. It represents the relationship to different entities within the coach-coachee system. It is also the model that we use to train Agile coaches, but my unique contribution to it is the probably questionable English translation. It's the title and the visual representation of that model. So, stance. For an effective coaching stance, we need empathy. Like our ability and willingness to relate to someone's moods, feelings, motives, sensations, whatever it is. We also need distance. We need distance to the coachee's problem and solution, so our ability to coach someone on a problem, but not solving them for them. And we need, and that is the most clumsy for everyone, is we need dissociation from the coachee system. That is our ability to maintain a balance between working closely with the team, but still be relatively independent from the team's dynamics. And this works very well next to other elements that are important for a good coaching relationship, and that is something like appreciation, respect for others. It's resource orientation and solution focus. So while I'm explaining the elements in a bit more depth, I invite you to check in and maybe figure where you might have some weaknesses or strengths that help you in your coaching assignment. So, empathy. We need empathy to build a solid coaching relationship. But while too little empathy can be bad, too much can also be harmful, because we tend then to get too absorbed in the feelings, moods, and problems of others. Most people I know don't have a real problem with feeling empathy, but it can become quite hard if we don't like the person. And I'm human too, so yeah, there are people I don't like very much, or there are also the elements of, and this is what I've seen very often in the Agile scene, is people who inherit a role that we don't like. Like there's a lot of skepticism towards management. And even this can make a coaching relationship quite difficult. There's also another element I want to make you aware of, and that is if we can take the problem of our coaches seriously. Like, yeah, that's not a real problem. At least I don't have it. So that can make it more difficult. And if you feel empathy could be a bit difficult in this specific coaching relationship, then you could think about a question like, what is there that I can appreciate about that coachee or about that specific problem? So what are the aspects that I can relate to get a bit more in the zone of empathy? Next up is distance. So as I said, Distance to the coachee's problem and solution. Because as coaches, we don't want to solve everyone's problems, but we are there to improve the capabilities of the organization to solve complex problems. And that includes, of course, people. Like, we want to help people solving complex problems. And when we walk around just as an expert and then tell them what they have to do, it wouldn't work very well. The main thing is we naturally gravitate to giving advice and consulting because we enjoy very much to experience ourselves as experts. Yeah, so it is definitely harder. It is also harder when you long for a specific outcome, like people with role conflicts. So a manager who would have to coach their team, what is a constellation often seen, has to be very mature in coaching to really stay distant from the outcome. It's also an opportunity to be very clear on that you leave the coaching relationship and say, from this point on, I feel I cannot longer keep the distance to the solution or the problem that you have. So, but what I could offer you is some mentoring or some advice. I could offer you training. But coaching in this constellation is not possible for me. So, a good question to ask is, what stake do I have in the outcome of this coaching? When you feel there is maybe something that could trigger you to take over the whole coaching outcome. Another question you could ask, can I phrase whatever outcomes comes out of that? Can I phrase that without judgment? So the third one is dissociation. So to our coachees system. And dissociation in this context is not meant as a mental state or a mental disorder. It is a cognitive perspective that we can take onto the system. So it's about keeping the bird's view. This is definitely harder for internal coaches. So coaches that work for quite a while with the same team or the same constellation will have harder times to not to fall into the trap of to associate themselves fully with the group that they are coaching. When you are fully associated, it feels like you are suffering the same fate. Like you have an inability to ask questions or come up with interventions that help your coachees to widen their perspective on their problems or on their system and how they can change or adapt it. That is a good indicator. So it's also a good question to ask, am I still helpful for the team? So can I still help my coachees to generate new insights about their system? So who of you identified maybe 1, 2 little weaknesses? Yeah. Who of you has observed people who may have 1, 2 little weaknesses? Yeah, if no hand would going up, I wouldn't believe you anyway, because I know I've fallen in all this categories depending on the situation and on the context. So, the third key message I want you to take away from this is, I believe we have to model the behavior we want to see in others. And I believe having a dedicated self-reflection ritual will make us more effective as coaches. It will make us not more effective only for our coachees, but for our stakeholders and the wider system. And your self-reflection ritual could be everything from coaching to supervision, intervision, case advice, feedback, your personal retrospective, the journal you are writing, whatever it is most important that it works for you. Ideally, you reflect with other people because that will provide you with a different perspective. But first and foremost, it has to work for you, and it has to fit into your schedule. It's like, I made that joke yesterday already, but it's like going to the gym. So if it's not scheduled, it doesn't happen. And it's the same with self-reflection. Usually we don't have time, or we never have enough time. So if there's not a blocker in your calendar, it's probably difficult. So outside the Agile coaching scene, it's very common for therapists, coaches, teachers, trainers, whoever is working closely with people, to reflect on their actions and interactions and on their stance towards others regularly. But in the Agile coaching world, it still seems to be quite uncommon to do that on a regular basis. So, but I still believe Agile coaching efforts become more effective with a regular self-reflection practice. All right, so I can sum it up. The key messages I wanted you to take away from that talk are: be intentional and clarify your assignment regularly to make sure that your actions are coherent with the higher intent in your organizations. Come up with exercising a real coaching stance. And the model I shared today, that's just an example. Maybe you know about something better, but try to exercise a real coaching stance and be clear and create awareness of when you have to leave your coaching stance. The third one is use any kind of self-reflection ritual that will help you to detect A, whether you are on a self-assignment, or B, you practice a real coaching stance. All right. So I know what I shared today might still feel theoretical. I was a bit aware that I might not have the same experience as in the dojo yesterday, but I still encourage you to try and reflect on what I shared today, because I strongly believe that if you can manage both, like avoiding self-assignments and practice the real coaching stance, that your coaching won't be ineffective. It will be more effective, and it's less likely that it's problematic and dysfunctional. Okay, so that's it from me. Time for your questions.
So there are a couple of questions. We're running out of time, so we'll try maybe two. Is it okay, Nadja?
Sure.
So the most voted is the problem really self-assignment, or rather crossing boundaries of your job role? I like autonomy, self-assignment within boundaries.
No, I don't think it's a different problem, because I do think that we have to have clarity as coaches what our boundaries are. And having a meaningful conversation about the higher intent would include what level of autonomy do I actually have to achieve that goal. And if there is no clarity around that, that would be also problematic.
Thanks for that. And maybe a Scrum Master one. So is it crucial for a Scrum Master to be dissociated with the team? What if the Scrum Master is a part of the team and share one of or more roles, Scrum Master plus QA plus Dev, for example?
So I do not think it is necessary, because a Scrum Master role can also be seen as working in the system and less on the system, that what I would assume from an Agile coach. But I do think it's certainly helpful for a Scrum Master to have the ability to dissociate from the system and may take a step back, and thereby asking questions or coming up with interventions that are helpful for the team.
And if you want to ask Nadja, you're probably somewhere to be found in the lobby.
Yeah, I'm here for the full day. Can't be here tomorrow, unfortunately.
And thanks for all those helpful tips that we can use.